Well, there I was trying to get on with my work, and something happened that's really made me a bit angry. I'll be honest about it. Yeah, angry and I think frustrated as well. And what it is after my last video, the BBC propaganda video, where I featured a professor on radio talking an old pile of rubbish, and I made a video giving the graphs, giving the figures, giving the facts, and I asked David, who was one of the subscribers who was on that podcast, I asked him to send it off to the professor, the video, so he could respond. That's fair enough. And I actually said in the video, the professor's a very nice man, etc. Now, what this video is about is the professor's response, because it shows that he doesn't understand the basics of science and the arrogance. It's ignorance with arrogance that we have here. How these people have become professors just amazes me. It doesn't say much for the standards today, I'm afraid. So I would like to show you his response to that video, and it's in an email here. Now that email may be hard to read, so here is the text from it printed out more clearly. Dear David, it seems you have been taken in by a retired engineer who is a climate change denier. He uses all the denier tactics in one video, and then he provides the links. He says, see below, and provides a link, which I have put in the description below this video. Everything that Paul says is incorrect, or unscientific, or simply just wrong. Best wishes, Mark. That is one of the most arrogant, unscientific things you can imagine. The truth is that this Mark, who I actually thought was quite a nice man and remarked on that in my video on the BBC propaganda, is actually just an ignoramus who doesn't even understand scientific principles. So for him to say everything in my video was wrong, I've been quoting the IPCC table, I've been showing the graphs of fossil fuel usage now at a record high in world history, and so on and so on. So I gave a whole pile of facts, none of which were wrong, all of which are referenced. And yet all he does is this. And what he responds to in that link is beyond disgust. This is a man who does not understand what science even is, or how the scientific process works. And the funny part is, he is the climate denier, because in his world, in his amazing world, the work we've done so far on net zero has saved the planet already. We were heading, and would have been now, in destroying the planet, but it's been saved. When in actual fact, we've made hardly any difference whatsoever. And of course, the alarmists actually think that the climate hasn't changed for thousands and thousands of years, and so on, even 100,000 years or so, and somehow we're now destroying it. They are the climate deniers. They think the climate's been far more constant than it ever has been. They deny the Little Ice Age, they deny the medieval warm period, even though it was global, and so on. The Roman warm period, they deny all of history. They're the ones in denial. I actually accept climate changes. They don't. They think only man has changed it, and that is so wrong. But here we go. Let's go through the link he provided, the headings of that. They isolate 5 major points of why, I was wrong in my video. Okay? So let's examine them one by one. This is a report, and it highlights the 5 corrupt pillars of climate change denial. Even the word denial has no place in science, actually, but never mind. This is the report heading. The first point is the classic old one. Oil firms spend millions on climate lobbying. Well, can I just say, I have not received a single farthing, nothing, not a penny, from anything connected with the oil, gas, or any other industry. In fact, I subsidise my entire programme. I subsidise and lose personal money in promoting all this. So that is a classic one. And if they think, or if he thought in any way I was taking money and therefore lying to you, fine. Tell him, let him say that in public, because I will sue him, because it is not true. So this is just an old classic that really annoys me, because it's got nothing to do with the science I presented, of course. This is just on a personal, trying to attack you personally and undermine the validity of your argument. Let's move on to the next one. Now, before I begin this, science is about finding out how the world works, and how the world works and the universe works is complex. And there is no such thing in science as it being settled. That's number one. So let's read out this science denial is what they're saying, because it's the exact opposite, of course. This is the type of denial we're all familiar with, that the science of climate change is not settled. Well, that's unscientific, because they're claiming it is. Deniers suggest climate change is just part of the natural cycle. Yes, we do. Or that climate models are unreliable and too sensitive to carbon dioxide. Yes, we do, because every single prediction so far has been wrong. Some even suggest that CO2 is such a small part of the atmosphere it cannot have a large heating effect. Well, I agree it does have a large heating effect. I detail it in my videos in great detail using Professor William Happer's work. Or that climate scientists are fixing the data to show the climate is changing, a global conspiracy that would take thousands of scientists, more than 100 countries to pull off. No, in actual fact, you've got 100 different models. Which one's right? I'm sorry, that is so unscientific, right? And then it goes on to say, all these arguments are false, and there is a clear consensus among scientists. Stop. No such thing as consensus in science. Ask the poor old office clerk who came up with the theory of relativity, Einstein. He had 100 scientists write into the newspapers, they even wrote a book against him, saying he was wrong. His answer? Very simple. Why don't just one of you give me the evidence to show I'm wrong? And of course he was right. Science is littered with that. Right. The climate models that predict global temperature rises have remained very similar over the last 30 years, despite a huge increase in complexity showing a robust outcome of the science. No, not at all. There are many different models, and it depends which one you take. There's a whole range of them. And you can take this extreme one or this low one, etc. But what's consistent about them is they're all wrong. Well, here is another one of their pillars of denial, economic denial. The idea that climate change is too expensive to fix is a more subtle form of climate denial. Economists, however, suggest that we could fix climate change now by spending 1% of world GDP, perhaps even less if the cost savings from the improved human health and expansion of the global green economy are taken into account. But if we don't act now, by 2050, it could cost over 20% of the world GDP. What utter madness that is. First of all, number one, we're paying more now than ever before because of the high cost of the green energy. And I've made many videos on this. I mean, today, as an example, gas is £54 a megawatt hour, and yet we're paying for floating offshore wind in the region of £200 a megawatt hour. For tidal, even more than that, and so on. All the green solutions, which need the gas still alongside them because they're an additional system, which I've pointed out, all of those make it so much more expensive. And this is the world they live in, these alarmists. It's unbelievable. If it was going to be so cheap, if it was so good, private industry would move in like a shot without the subsidies and be able to provide great, cheap power, no problem at all. But they don't. They have to have the huge subsidies. And the funny thing here is, of course, the extra CO2 in the atmosphere has produced all these record world crops, record cereals, record rice, etc. And to reduce it, to actually limit this plant food, because that's what it is, would actually cause mass starvation. We're able to feed the world without any more land use. That's what the information shows. We're able to do that, and a large part of that, not all, but a large part of that is due to the extra CO2. So in actual fact, everything here is the opposite of the truth, and you're meant to believe it. Humanitarian denial, another pillar. Climate change deniers also argue that climate change is good for us. I don't know what they're talking about with that. I mean, it depends. I mean, if we have a new ice age, well, we're in an ice age, but if we have a new glaciation with 1/2 mile of ice over Birmingham, I'm not saying that's good for us. I don't know where this comes from. They suggest longer, warmer summers in the temperate zone will make farming more productive. Well, it will. These gains, however, are often offset by the drier summers and increased frequency of heat waves in those same areas. But the IPCC say there's no more heat waves. And there's certainly no more droughts, I can tell you that. There are far worse droughts in the past than there are today. Far more extreme weather in the past than today. That's what all the data shows. For example, the 2010 Moscow heatwave killed 11,000 people, devastated the Russian wheat harvest, and increased global food prices. But you can't say that heatwave was due to mankind changing the CO2. The heat waves are still going to happen. They're just less frequent. So I could pick, let's pick the millions that died in previous heat waves prior to 1900. No, this is so unscientific, and somehow we're denying the humanitarian side of it. So here we are, the next pillar, political denial. Climate change deniers argue we cannot take action because other countries are not taking action. But not all countries are equally guilty of causing current climate change. For example, 23% of human-produced CO2 in the atmosphere is generated by the US, another 22% produced by the EU. Africa produces just under 5%. You see, this is left-wing total madness propaganda. What they missed out there is China, who produces more than most of the rest of the world combined. I mean, look, China is totally dominating the CO2 graph, totally. I'll just remind you, here it is again. Now, China is just ignored. Now, if they were right, let's just say their alarmism was correct, and we're really facing an existential crisis by 2050 because we've got to reduce CO2, and yet we're actually producing more of it than ever before, you'd want to deal with China and India and everyone. But no, politically we can't. So if it was true, you're just ignoring the elephant in the room, aren't you? Right? So, having Britain in its entire history produced less CO2 than China's produced recently is an absurd situation. But you miss out all that because you're basically anti-Western values that just deny the reality in front of you. But that's got nothing to do with science. And pillar number 5, crisis denial. The final piece of climate change denial is the argument that we should not rush into changing things, especially given the uncertainty raised by other 4 areas of denial above. Deniers argue that climate change is not as bad as scientists make out. We will be much richer in our future and better able to fix climate change. They also play on our emotions, as many of us don't like change and can feel we are living in the best of times, especially if we are richer or in power. Wow. The simple facts are that we can't, as mankind, control our climate. The simple facts are that the underdeveloped countries and poverty, etc., is far less now than it's ever been in human history. And that, by the way, is because of fossil fuels. So you're actually arguing against yourselves here. This is just all left-wing nonsense propaganda that this professor swallowed and put forward as a counter-argument to my video, where I actually give the details, I give the graphs, I give the sources, IPCC, everybody. But no, all that's denied with this political tripe coming from this document. That's what it is. I'm sorry, Mark. I don't think you're worthy of the name of a professor. You certainly don't know your subject. And you didn't respond to any of my scientific points. You've gone against the IPCC. You've gone against NASA. You've gone against all the data, all that. And you come back with a document based on emotion and based on not an understanding of science. Because in science, consensus does not count. In science, appealing to authority by itself does not count. It's only the evidence from that authority that counts. That's it. Now, what I did try to do here with this is submit this has been given to the BBC, by the way, to the BBC Radio London, this video, and we've asked for a debate. I don't think there's any chance of that because, of course, they won't debate. One of my problems is nobody, I'm Billy No Mates, nobody will debate me. And I've asked Mark, how about this, Mark? How about we go on a Zoom call and we debate each other? Right? How about we pick a subject, because that will get somewhere then. Pick any subject in your climate alarmism. Pick one of the claims you made on that BBC programme. Claim one of them and let's discuss it, Mark. Do that. I don't think you will, because everybody who's tried to arrange a debate with me and others on our side, with the alarmists, they pull away from it. And if he was right, if he was so clever as a professor and right, he should be able to demolish me. He should be able to actually trounce me and leave me in bits as regards the argument. But oh no, they avoid it. And you know what? In the end, that's the simplest and most telling thing. And with that, I'll finish this short video that I had to make in response to Mark's response to my video. Thank you for watching.